Hey everyone, I so appreciate you sharing your ahas. Those of you who listened to video one, this being video two, the conversations I'm having in direct messages from my last video are about what addiction sounds like, what it looks like, and how to stop communicating with it. If you missed this first video in the series, it's on our YouTube channel. Go check it out. This is video two of this three-part series. I'm sharing really scary statistics about addiction. And I shared last video one key skill that makes a major difference for families. And it's really easy to implement. You have the power to begin this change. A few years ago, when I was doing overdose interventions in the emergency room, I heard repeatedly similar concerns. Families were bitter, super tired, and really, really mad. It would sound like this: he's such a liar. She's an asshole. He's being so manipulative. Now, this is completely true, but these comments also hurt me at the time to hear, because not only is that way of showing up for your loved one and for your own life not working for you, I was also that lying, manipulative jerk holding a Dunkin' Donuts cup at my kitchen table with my three kids, telling them I'm not drinking. So while I was working in the ER, I started to gather these families at a conference table. The part of me that was hurt for their loved one, because I knew when family approaches us at that stage in that way, it doesn't help anyone. So I would gather these families at this health center every week, for 2 hours. We would sit around the table and I would hear these families' stories, pain and heartache coming out of the mouths and hearts of many, many families. We would all listen to each other's pain. And after each one, I would tell stories. So it was this cycle of families sharing painful stories about how mad they were. And what it would want me to do was share my darkest moments, my biggest regrets. I wanted them to hear the voice of their loved one who wasn't able to say these things yet. So I was seeing their pain and their mad start to slowly pull away from them over time as I shared more and more of my own truth. I was lifting the curtain of what was happening underneath for their loved one. And so I watched over months of time with these families that their truth would start to emerge. What they really wanted would start to emerge, what they wanted for themselves and for their family. So when the mad is in the way, you can't see the truth. One day I remember looking around the table. There were probably 20 people there at the time, and every single one of them's loved one was sober. These families were getting better. They were getting well from their pain and from their heartache. And what was happening as a result of them getting well is their loved one was getting well. You see what I'm saying? What I want for you, each and every one of you, is I want you to have the peace that you deserve. I want you to have a family that is consumed in peace and well-being, to get a sober loved one as well. I want you to be one of those families at the table. And in order for you to show up different, unlike the pain and the heartache that you're feeling, is we got to do something different. Before I give you today's key principle of what I want you to think about trying, did you ever ask yourself or say out loud, why do I have to be the one to go to this meeting? Why do I have to be the one to change? Yes. Why am I here and she's not? Last night in one of our meetings, a sister of an alcoholic said just that. She was feeling resentment at being in our meeting because her sister wasn't. And we called it a resentment. And here's what I'll say to you about that. You have a choice. You know how you sometimes think there's nothing you can do for your loved one? You have a choice about that resentment that you have. You can stay mad and wait, or you can find your power inside you, pull that resentment off for the life that it's sucking out of you, and start to show up different. You win when you do that. And by the way, your loved one wins, because resentment and pain, facing resentment and pain isn't causing well, right? If you're not happy with things, if we're not happy with things in our life, we have a choice to change the circumstance. Your loved one wants this too. They just have a dis-ease, a disorder of their mind, their body, and their spirit. So they can't be often the ones that start it. But you can be that circumstance. You are the one that can start the change. So a client of mine, Lindsay, came in to stop the chaos because her husband had relapsed and he was actively dealing with his alcohol dependence in her home. And toward the start of the program, Lindsay admitted to me that she was very skeptical. Her therapist had told her to attend meetings. She didn't buy it. Her daycare director had now introduced her to me, and Lindsay wanted to believe me and her daycare director, but she found it really hard to believe what I was promising that she could have, because her alcoholic husband was drinking in the basement and there was no sign of willingness. So that skepticism makes a lot of sense, but she came in despite that skepticism. And every day she woke up wondering, this is what she told me, if it was the last day of her marriage. And when she finally did register for our introductory program, she said, I've tried everything, every possible thing I could think of to get my husband sober. So tipping point's my last resort. And I remember distinctly in our first class, Lindsay shared, this is a Zoom class, Lindsay shared right after Jackie shared. And after listening to Jackie, Lindsay was fighting back tears and she looked at Jackie and said, you look peaceful and I want that. So Lindsay told me later that it was her seeing the peace in Jackie that I told her she could have that caused her to stay. She had been so burned by the world and she had been so wanting to believe me, but she had a lot of doubt. Once she heard Jackie, she realized she was in the right place. Now, Lindsay loves her life so much and being in that presence of peace that she wants to be that beacon for new families who come join us. She's one of our ambassadors. So the key point I want to teach you today, after you learn how to stop speaking to the addiction from video 1, the key thing I want to teach you today is that there's a role you're taking on in the life of the addiction. I know you don't mean to, but I want to explain to you about family systems. And I invite you to take a close look. I'm going to use Lindsay as an example, with her permission, of course. She said she was the case manager in her family. Do you identify with that? She made all the phone calls. She made all the decisions. She was busy, busy, busy. She was checking on Uber to see if her husband had gone to the liquor store, and she was calling all the help to come in. So families take on these roles for their loved one, for their own relief, and you're not qualified. Okay? We're not qualified for these roles as family members. Here are some of the common roles that I hear people taking on. Taxi driver, personal assistant, cooking, shopping, cleaning, picking up for, going to the bank, cashing checks. Are you the counselor, social worker? Like Lindsay, she said, I have to fire myself as the case manager. We had a big deal. We made a big deal about this. Our principle is find the role that you're taking in your family that you think is helping, because it's not. Lindsay says this was a really big game changer for her. She fired herself, and I would like you to fire yourself. What role are you taking on in your family? You're actually helping to keep the addiction alive. When you learn this one fundamental skill and you can fire yourself, you can start to introduce peace and serenity rather than blame and hostility and justification and shame. Those aren't working. No more of that, because that's not good for you. It's not going to get your loved one sober. It's not as if your loved one one day is just going to say, you know what, you've yelled at me enough. You've stopped talking to me enough. This is crazy. I'm going to stop drugging. That doesn't happen. The addiction is far more powerful than all of us. The one place you do have power is when you find out what role you're playing and you fire yourself and you stop talking to and with the addiction. Lindsay signed up for our program wanting peace for her husband, and she realized she could have peace first. It was an unexpected result for her. Now she has peace in her life despite what's going on around her. Now, was this easy? No. No one in our program would tell you it's easy, but here's what they'll tell you. It's a whole lot easier to live this way than the way you're living in active addiction. Being around addiction is like poison, and it's making you sick. I hear repeated concerns when families call me. And another key concern I hear is, I don't need help. They need help. And that's the us them cycle. Are you caught in that cycle? Lindsay was in this cycle. She picked up the phone and called me, and then she talked to someone else and called me back. She was in this, but it's him. It's confusing to come here and understand how we're working. But let me give you an explanation that might help. I go speak at treatment centers all the time. I spoke recently to 40 people in detox, men and women. And I give my phone number out. Some of them call me. They want help. So just imagine your loved one goes to detox and I show up and I speak and I give them my phone number and they call me. This is what happens every time. When I call them back, they don't answer. If they do answer, they're not in any shape to talk through what they need help for, right? They're not at the table yet. They're not fully engaged in their recovery yet. They have an addiction and it lives up here. So I want to translate what your loved one hasn't been able to tell you up until now, because you can't have a conversation with someone in active addiction. This us and them, this you cycle that you're in is not a conversation. Blame, shame, anger, and unpleasant exchanges are not a conversation. Our program is going to disrupt the traditional model for your loved one. Here's why. Do you know what they learn when they go to treatment? One of the big key factors your loved one hears when they go to treatment: you only have to change one thing. Everything. Yeah. You're part of that everything. And why don't you know that that's what they learn in treatment? Because they're not telling you, because the addiction is controlling them, right? So this model, working with the family, is like an inside out model. I want the people all around your loved one. I want all the things around your loved one that contribute to this cycle continuing. And I want to plug in and give treatment and recovery to all of those. Because when I first came to treatment, my first out of 3 tries, they told me 20% of us will make it. That's grim. 20% of us make it. That means 80% won't. That kept me from trying. Why would I bother? But when I started to lift the curtain for families so they could see what the addiction doesn't want you to know, we see the opposite here. Over 80% recover when the family is at the table. How can you not recover when everyone around you is? Because recovery is contagious. Isn't it important that you learn how to offer real support for your loved one? Another key concern I hear repeatedly is he or she doesn't want to get sober. And, it makes sense at one level. If somebody tells you, I don't want that, you might think that to be true. But again, this isn't like any other situation. This is something with a brain disorder. This is something where the brain is impaired with the addiction. The rational part of the brain can't be accessed when we're struggling in active addiction, right? Addiction is, I don't want anything else. That's what the addiction's saying. I don't want anything else, just this. That's not your loved one. Your loved one needs treatment, but doesn't know it, because addiction treatment is designed for people that don't want it, because addiction isn't something we want. You might want to rewind that one and watch it again. The addiction is as strong as our need to breathe. That's why so many struggle, because we're expected on our own to want it. Wanting it means I want to live. It means I need to like myself. Guys, I didn't want it until I had it. Most of us don't want it until we get it. But the dis-ease prevents us from seeing that on our own. So it takes a village. Don't wait for your loved one to want it. We can end up waiting too long. Applying these tools will shift the energy around your addict. So the wanting it will increase. We at Tipping Point Recovery are increasing recovery probability at an exponential rate. Our program is specifically designed to move you and your loved one through these massive barriers, these boulders that are called denying and justifying and accommodating. We want to stop accommodating. We want to help you engage all the people around your loved one. You who are listening to this video, maybe you're the first one at the table. I want to help you go get others to the table. I'm going to be sharing a third video in this 3-part series. I'm going to be going live on Facebook with a client of mine. She's going to courageously share her experience, strength, and hope. She was getting hives all over her body. She had severe anxiety when I met her. She wants to share her journey with you. So be sure to catch all 3 of these videos so you can put these pieces together. It's a plan designed to get you out of the chaos. These are your stepping stones out of the chaos. But before I go, please comment on this. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share this with someone else. Help us get the word to the families that you know that need this message. I'm sure you know people that would benefit from this conversation. Send me a direct message, a comment, an email. I want to hear from you. What's landing? What are you trying? What are you putting into place? You can have this. Your family can have this. I want this for you, just like Lindsay. And I'll see you in video 3.